Well, I guess you've pressed play on another episode of Over Underrated, the music podcast with myself and Babs. And yeah, this week we are chatting about glam rock, featuring the glam rock legends Queen and the Ark from Sweden. We have a special guest with Christian Patrick, a journalist and also the obscure tourist. More on that later. And we shall be checking out the playlists and discussing all things glam rock. So I really hope that you continue this journey and discover if we find these bands over or underrated.
Oh, hang on. Yeah, what are we calling this podcast?
Was it over underrated?
Over underrated. Sous-évalué. Überschätzt. Överunderskattad. Over underrated.
Welcome to another episode of Over Underrated. It is I, Fran, and I'm here with my co-host, Babs. How are you doing, Babs?
I am doing very well, Fran. I am drinking not alcohol for once. I am drinking a very strong milky Earl Grey with bergamot honey. Check me out.
What kind of honey is that?
Bergamot, because
Bergamot.
bergamot is a type of lemon. That's a type of lemon that's in Earl Grey, so it's citrusy goodness warming me up.
And I've had a bad day, so I'm drinking coffee liqueur, which looks like a bottle from 1944, to give me some more spunk before we discuss two spunky bands, I may add.
I was going to say, we need so much spunk for this discussion. Let's get it up in everyone. Spunky drinks aside, what have you been listening to this week, music-wise?
I don't want to be a one-trick pony, but I've been listening to another Swedish band. Because I was researching this, I then took me down an old avenue down to the mid-noughties in Sweden. So I've been listening to a band called Yvonne Strip Music, who no one has heard of in the UK either. Maybe we can talk about them on another episode, but they're kind of a goth synth rock kind of band.
Oh, yes, please.
A little bit editors, and then the lead singer's now gone solo and gone even darker. We're talking like full goth clown makeup with a deep, strong voice like this.
It sounds exciting. I can't wait.
How about yourself?
Very good. Yeah, you've mentioned strip music to me in passing before, so if we do an episode, I'll be intrigued. I have been listening to Ray's album, My 21st Century Blues. Have you heard about Ray, her album, her record label struggles?
I have seen her on the Graham Norton show and enjoyed what I heard.
Yeah, so she went to number one recently with her song Escapism that I got totally obsessed with and was like, damn it, because I discovered it just after we did our Best of 2022 episode. Although its inclusion on this album means that I could still use it for this one because I really got obsessed with it. It's amazing pop, and I won't go into it too much in case we do talk about it at a future date. But I'm kind of blown away by her album because, yeah, the story of Ray, if you don't know it, so she's a very young artist, but she was kind of screwed over by her label Polydor, who had her on the label and basically wouldn't let her put out an album, just kept making her write songs for other artists, and she released very little until she did a tweet thread about it. And thankfully for her, because this doesn't happen for many people, they released her and then she could go on and do something else. And yeah, released Escapism, went to number one. And I've only heard the whole album through once, but it's amazing. And as someone who doesn't really listen to lyrics, having only listened to the album through once, like, you know what the stories are of the songs straight away. Like, it really, it's really striking. I'm very excited to get into the album and to hear more about her, because some of the songs that I did know from the past, she guested on a Charlie XCX song, and she did this great song called Are You Us as well. Like, I think she's a very exciting kind of pop artist.
Didn't she get a big kick from TikTok, I believe?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think I discovered Escapism through the Switched on Pop episode, which we mentioned on songs becoming big through TikTok, and sped up versus slow down versions. And that song was discussed. So I'd heard of her. I'd seen the tweet thread, but not got into it. But now I'm a big fan, I think.
Thank you. And we have a guest today. We have a guest all the way from Canada, our first ever Canadian guest. So I will bring you Christian Patrick, who is in Toronto. How are you doing, Christian?
I'm doing pretty great. I have my own drink as well. I'm drinking a tea still quite early here in Toronto.
What type of tea?
Orange Pico,
Oh,
you gotta go with the OP.
refined.
Yes,
You've
yeah.
got a good mug as well, Christian.
Yeah,
It's
yeah. I
quite
feel
flowery.
tea drinkers are a special breed in that we use our just one cup. I do anyway, and many people I know, it's just like that's the cup that you use, and nothing else goes in it, and no one else can use it aside from yourself. So there it is.
But Christian, have you been listening to anything at all this week?
I've been, you know what? I've been diving into some old British bands and just some old things that I'm shocked that I never heard of before, like Sunshine Underground. Where were they my whole life? They're so good. It's like right up my alley. Recently discovered Idols, which everyone, I feel very late on the bandwagon to that.
I think Fran recently discussed Idols on a podcast that I've guested on, and he's guesting on, and how I think he was the only one that didn't like Idols.
I'm the only person in the UK who doesn't like Idols. But it's fine. I'm happy to step back and let everyone else enjoy them.
It's not particularly my kind of music, but his voice and he doesn't even have a great voice, but the way that it's recorded, it gets me somehow. I don't know how, because I mean, the music isn't really my thing, but I do find myself listening to it. I don't know if do you know a band called The Automatic?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, in the UK, they had a massive hit with Monster.
Yeah. Love that band. And I recently discovered they released another couple albums after that debut. So been listening the hell out of those.
So today the theme, I'm guessing, is glam rock. Am I correct, Fran?
We are going glam rock. So yeah, we have chosen as Overrated a band some of you may have heard of called Queen. But because Queen had a vast amount of success through 3 decades, we've chosen the 70s because our underrated act are more of a glam band. So I've chosen the first 5 years of Queen, the glam years from like 74 to around 78, rather than moving on to the 80s Queen, the more bombast stadium rock Queen. So and then for underrated, we have Christian's choice, which is The Ark from Sweden.
Indeed, a glam rocky time. We haven't really done anything glam rocky, have we, Fran? We've done sort of hair metal, and that's the closest we've got, I think, to this topic.
Well, as a teenager, the first CD I ever bought was The Best of the Sweet. Although I think the Sweet are an underrated glam band. I believe they were bigger in Sweden as well. So I have always been a fan of some guys in makeup and some gold lame onesies. Is that what? That's probably not the word, is it? Hot pat,
like cat suits.
Yeah, cat suits.
Yeah,
platform shoes. Yes, please. The Queen I like is probably more of that era. I've always been waiting for a glam revival, which never really happened, but thankfully it did happen in other parts of the world. But we'll talk about that more of that later on. But to discuss Queen, I don't really need to give them an introduction. I'm pretty sure everyone's aware of the world of Freddie Mercury at all. But I just chose 5 songs from 5 different albums, starting with their first UK hit, and then moving on. But Babs, what are your thoughts on Queen?
We're trying to slay another sacred cow, obviously, after Prince and David Bowie, depending on what order this comes out in. So I always find that an interesting discussion because, I think like both those acts as well, Queen are talented musically, but obviously Freddie Mercury is an icon whose presence, resonates beyond the music. And what I find quite interesting about Queen is, number one, how obsessive some of their fans can be. They're definitely one of those bands where it's like, oh, okay, the enthusiasm is strong. But what I find kind of incredible with Modern Eyes, it's how, they were so unabashedly flamboyant, yet lots of actually kind of conservative people I know really like them. So like my grandparents were really into them. My maternal grandparents, who were very conservative, and a few other people I've known who you wouldn't think would be into them really, really love them. And I know that part of it is because Queen, especially in the glam rock era, it was flamboyant, but it was also in line with like, yeah, a lot of the tough guys doing this kind of stuff. So yeah, I find them a very intriguing and unique band in that respect. I've noticed that all 5 songs that you've picked are from their greatest hits, which I think is one of the best greatest hits of all time. But yeah, I'm not a huge Queen fan. I think they've got some absolutely fantastic songs, but they've never been a band that I've really wanted to go beyond the greatest hits as much as I've enjoyed them. And I am truly wondering what the backlash is going to be for this one.
Christian, are you a Queen fan, or your thoughts on Queen?
Queen is quite a strange band for me, especially if you know me and you know what kind of music I like, what really gets me going.
What does get you going, Christian? Like, what is your general music taste?
So as far as music goes, I'll just break it down. The Beatles and Guns N' Roses were my first favorite bands as a kid. So you can see where I'm going. And even though I also was a Britpop kid and grew up in one of the biggest Britpop markets in the world outside of England, which is Toronto, if you don't know, really embraced Britpop. And I think that I'm probably closer to Fran's musical sensibilities than yours, Babs. I know how you dislike melodic choruses.
Oh, you've been prepped. Okay, good.
I've listened to enough episodes to know what you don't like, but I love epic, bombastic, sort of over the top bands like Foxy Shazam, Guns N' Roses, obviously, The Darkness, ABBA, Iron Maiden, The Sweets, Slade. I even love Bon Jovi, and guitar bands in general, and I love guitar solos. Give me a James Dean Bradfield and Slash solo any day of the week. So that is
interesting mashup there. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Got it.
Yeah. So sort of like drives home the point of what you'd think that I would love Queen based on those bands previously mentioned, but they check all the boxes for me as a band and as musicians. Amazing vocals, unbelievable melodies, guitar solos and licks, epic songs, strange structures. I love strange structures. It's actually like how I, as a musician, that's how I have always approached songwriting, are just like 10 songs in one. Queen seems they're obviously a mainstream band, but they're very eclectic in a weird way. Again, something I should love, but there's something missing for me. And this leading up to this podcast, really exploring Queen again and trying to figure out what that missing link for me is I've kind of boiled it down to, it's just missing that emotional connection for me. I've just never been able to connect with Queen's music on an emotional level. And it's so strange because Freddie Mercury is a very emotive singer, and his lyrics are pretty deep, but I don't know, it's just not there for me. So
I think there's music where people sing and you feel it directly in your soul. I was talking about Ray's album, and I'm not someone who listens to lyrics, but it's just it feels like she's telling you a story like directly to you. Whereas I think with Queen, it's a bit more meditating on the world and maybe a bit more detached. I wonder.
I think that maybe Queen is a bit more Dungeons and Dragons, kind of, especially the early stuff, which is hard to connect to. I mean, you can have an emotional connection to Fat Bottom Girls, but yeah, I think
I certainly do.
It's funny because I never really knew a lot of Freddie Mercury's lyrics, and so when I was listening to the list that Fran made, I really dove in, and it was like, oh, these are actually pretty deep. Why am I not connecting to these? And again, it's like self introspection and trying to figure out, and this goes to a general like love of music for everyone, and I think it comes down to when you heard music. I might have been a little bit too old maybe like I don't know. The Beatles really resonate with me. A lot of their stuff is nonsense, but it brings me back to a time. It evokes some sort of emotion for me, and it's interesting because you have the Ark and then you have the Queen, and to me they're almost synonymous in a similar way. Like, but one I connect with and one I don't, and I put it right down to the fact when I heard them and where I heard them.
Yeah, I think that makes a difference because for me, Queen are kind of like the Beatles for me of like, well, yeah, it's songs that I heard from a very young age because it's music that my parents listened to. So it's not something that I discovered by myself. And that's very different, especially when you come across an unsung band and you're like, oh, wow, like this band with all their back catalogue is amazing versus, okay, this band that everyone says is fantastic and everyone obsesses over. Why when I'm not feeling it? So, but yeah, I mean, you said, Fran, that you've gone with kind of the glam rock era. So it really is so the 5 songs that you've picked, is it kind of 5 of your favorite Queen songs to represent that era or just 5 of the biggest hits? What was your...
No, I just thought I'd choose like some big hitters in the 70s. Like with Queen, I don't own any Queen at all because there's a sort of band that you just hear them so often. I don't think I'd ever want to do a deep dive on Queen. I don't hate Queen. Like they don't bother me. I think Freddie Mercury's a fantastic singer, a great frontman. I'd love to see him live. I think, but like I said before, they seem like a band from someone else's era. Like they don't belong to me. And maybe if I listen to their earlier stuff, which I don't really know, like their first 3 albums, I don't really know many songs. Maybe I might connect to that more because it'd be brand new for me. But yeah, most of the 80s tracks, they're fine, but I would never hunt them down. So the songs I've chosen are just like the big moments during that era, maybe to chat about. I thought I'm not going to go hardcore on some B-sides. Some B-sides. I know none of us are fanatics, and so I thought, it's just skim the surface and see what we think about Queen and 70s. And I thought maybe I can try and pretend that I'm a 16-year-old in 1974 listening to your songs for the first time, if that's at all possible.
Overrated.
So first track I have from 1974, although it's re-recorded from a 1973 take on the first album, which is called 7 Seas of Live 1974, which was their first UK hit. And the reason it was their first UK hit was because David Bowie cancelled his Top of the Pops appearance and Queen took their place. And back in the 70s, if on Top of the Pops, you would be seen by most of the nation, so therefore always get a top 40 hit. I've noticed a lot of your songs do have a lot of piano, so when you think of Queen, you might think of like Brian May's guitar, but for some reason I've chosen a lot of piano-led tracks.
Yeah.
And all of it's also written by Freddie Mercury, although Brian May did say that he did write the guitar parts of the song, but Freddie ignored his writing credit. It's just a piano, glam rock, it's got a chugging bass. The lyrics are a bit nonsense. I can imagine this being a Meatloaf track in many ways. I quite like the piano introduction, but after a couple of minutes, I move on. I do quite like how it ends with the I do like to be beside the seaside motif, but apart from that, it's a generally fine introduction to Queen, but not stunning. Babs, what are your thoughts?
To use your phrase, this might shock you, but I actually didn't know this song. It's the only song I didn't know on the playlist, and it surprised me that it was Queen, because I feel like the only thing that sets it apart as being Queen are the absolutely incredible vocals. And I have to say, both bands that we're talking about today, two of the best frontman vocalists ever, as was clearly Freddie Mercury. There's some amazing harmonies. But yeah, there's a lot of violins and a lot of noodling, and I didn't like the way that they came together. I can't deny that it packs in a lot for, is it like 2 minutes 47? But I enjoyed the lyrics. Fear me, you loathsome lazy creatures. I descend upon your earth from the skies. I could go on, but I won't. I will getting into Dungeons and Dragons mode, as you said, Fran. But this really wasn't for me.
Christian?
It's interesting because I don't remember this song either. And I feel like I've heard this song before, but I can't be sure. It sounds like a bunch of other things.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like it is Queen in a way, right? That's what I thought. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Babs, are you an Iron Maiden fan?
I am not an Iron Maiden fan. I
Okay, well
had
that's
a metalhead ex-boyfriend who was into Iron Maiden for quite a while, and it passed me by.
well, this is probably why you don't like the song, because this is a heavy
Okay.
metal song. To me,
Yeah.
I listen to this
Mhm.
and all I hear is Iron Maiden. I hear the galloping guitars and bass, and I hear Brian May's harmonized like double guitar leads and solos. I also hear a lot of the darkness in the guitars in
Mhm.
this one. And then, like you said, the lyrics, very heavy metal.
Mhm.
Fear me, you loathsome lazy creatures.
Mhm.
I command your very souls, unbelievers. Like, it's so heavy metal. And yet it's all tied to Freddie Mercury's like silky smooth, you know, vocal part. So it's really unexpected. And of
Mhm.
course, Fran, you mentioned at the end, it all resolves with that like sort of sea shanty at the end.
Mhm.
So yeah, a lot in just a little over 2 minutes. But I liked it. I loved it
So
actually.
I'm guessing this wasn't a hit outside the UK then. That's interesting.
But it's on the greatest hits, and that is one of the best-selling albums everywhere. So I feel like, yeah, more people than you'd think would know it, but maybe it wasn't a radio hit.
So moving to a hit, which I know was a hit in the UK and the US with Killer Queen. And yeah, this is, I think, the trademark Queen vocal harmony, which you hear for the next 5 years. Is it Roy Baker was their producer who kind of got them into multi-tracking vocals. But as a fan of the Suite, I think the Suite did that harmony singing before Queen.
I don't know anything about the suite, so I will defer to Christian on this.
Yeah. Oh, I don't know the year. I don't know the years of some of the. Didn't do my sweet research right here.
Didn't think there would be this much
So
sweet
like
chat.
Ballroom Blitz was 72, Blockbuster 71, so it predates the old Queen, but
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, it would have been about 72, 71. And you're right with the three-part tripled harmonies. But I think they was a little bit more subdued with the suite. So it wasn't so much a trademark sound of the band as it was really, really highlighted with the Queen and with Roy Baker, right?
And going forward, yeah, you'd hear that multi-track all the way up to the late 70s. But yeah, again, in my head, like this is like a glam rock track, but again, it's got more piano than I can remember. Yeah, is it too much production? I think that might put off people regarding Queen. That I guess I never saw them play this live. I don't know how more stripped back it was. Apparently, the lyrics about a cool girl. So it's interesting. Freddie's lyrics back in that time. I guess is he playing like the straight rock and roll frontman by singing about that sort of stuff?
There's a quote from him actually. So on this song, he said, "People are used to hard rock, energy music from Queen. Yet with this single, you almost expect Noel Coward to sing it. It's one of those bowler hat, black suspender belt numbers. Not that Coward would ever wear that. It's about a high class girl. I'm just trying to say that classy people can be whores as well." Quote.
With laser beams as well.
With laser beams.
Who knows? But yeah, I quite enjoy this. And if you guys like music, which I hope you do, there's a band called Travis who've covered this. This is actually a really good version. Surprisingly,
Really?
yeah.
I didn't know the version.
So Babs, are you a fan of Killer Queen?
I'm a huge fan of Killer Queen. I remember writing out the lyrics to this song as a teenager on my exercise book to look and sound a bit more cultured, obviously, because he's talking about Marie Antoinette, Khrushchev, Kennedy, Maurice Chandon, etc., etc. And I really love when we analyze songs that are popular and I've heard for ages, because taking a step back, I didn't know what I like about this song, but yeah, beyond the lyrics, I really like how I really like the piano in here. There's a grand piano and a tack piano. I had to look up what that was. Tack piano, okay. Yes. I guess that sort of honky tonky piano sound as well. Maybe Christian, and as a musician, can tell us more if he knows.
He plays not tack piano.
There's a Wikipedia page about it, guys. Check it out. Don't
There's
make me
one right behind
me. Yeah, I think while I didn't like the noodling and the piano on Seven Seas of Rye, here I think they fit together very, very nicely. It's almost like the guitars and the bridge are having a conversation as well with themselves. So it feels like it comes together much more naturally. I'd never paid attention to the bass line, but it's a nice accompaniment from John Deacon as well. Freddie Mercury harmonizing with himself is beautiful, and there are those lovely touches like the guitar that sounds like a cat before he says playful as a pussycat. Meow. The effect that's put on Mercury's voice when he says dynamite with a laser beam, there's a lot of things that make it quite special, and I think it's futuristic and clever pop rock.
So has Brian May always had the same guitar sound in each song?
Isn't the story that his guitar is made from wood that his dad cut from a fireplace? I remember watching a documentary about this. John Robbins,
the Red Special,
get in touch.
Or something.
Yeah, something. So it's from this documentary that I saw ages ago. Correct us if we're wrong. I'm sure you will, Queen fans, because you're obsessive. Love you, really. Yeah, Brian May's dad cut down wood from a fireplace and made a guitar with it. And Brian May's dad, who was interviewed in this documentary, said, there is no other guitar sound like it. Like, even if Brian is doing a song that I don't know about, I'll hear it and be like, well, that's Brian playing the guitar, and I'm always correct.
Christian, a Queen fan?
Yeah, I love this song. Just to get back to that Brian May sound, I do not know. I'm sure that if his dad said it, it's true, but I've tried many, many years to get that sound, and it's impossible. So you
need to go to a fireplace in the 60s in the UK, Christian, and then you'll get it.
That's the thing. Honestly, his guitar sound is ridiculous for what he's using for an amp and for a guitar. It's like unrivaled. In terms of Killer Queen, I just made a couple notes. Yeah, love this song. And I don't think I've ever really paid attention to the lyrics in the song. That chorus, she's a killer queen, gunpowder, gelatine, dynamite with a laser beam. It's brilliant. Musically, and I'll disagree with you on this, Fran. I actually think this song is very sparse. It's produced, maybe overproduced for what's there, but there's not much there to start with. It's like I said, mostly piano and drums and bass. But Brian, and this is where like I really noticed how tasteful Brian May's guitar playing is in a lot of Queen songs. Like his restraint is ridiculous in this song. It's very, very sparse, and his leads fit neatly into the folds like a hand in glove. Just it's mostly nothing, and then every once in a while he'll like come in with a little lick or that guitar solo. It's pretty special.
I wonder how many like pedals he has on stage, because you think of like the Edge or whatever, and it's all about effects. But Brian does have one, just a bit of distortion occasionally. This comes in.
I don't think he ever used distortion. It's just his amp turned up as high as it can go, so it's like it's breaking up. So it's like a clean channel. This is from what I've gathered watching some gear videos on it, because like I said, I've been trying to find this sound. I'm sure there's pedals now that can mimic it, but to get it unadulterated and like straight out of an amp, it's like it's only him. It's so identifiable.
Pure May. So moving on to my favourite Queen song, guys, which is Bicycle Race. Mainly because when you fucking first heard this, you go, what the fuck is happening? Is this actually about a bicycle race? And apparently the internet says it's not about bicycles at all. It's about him.
What does the internet say?
It's about him being bisexual.
Okay.
Well, you know how bisexuals love riding bikes.
I don't know if you guys seen the video for this song or any promo around it.
A long time ago. Yeah. Is it naked people
on
bikes or near naked people on bikes?
Like 30 complete naked ladies cycling around at Wimbledon racetrack. This has been banned in most countries. But yeah, it's it's a bonkers rock and roll single. It's got pop culture mentions. Like, what child doesn't enjoy hearing Star Wars mentioned or Jaws in a song? It has a bike bell breakdown instrumental followed by an outstanding bra mega guitar solo. It's daring. It's genius in my mind. Babs, Bicycle Race.
As I've mentioned before, my favorite song about bicycles is the Mark Ronson song with Carl Falconer and from The View and Spank Rock. You mentioned the BBB, the bicycle bell breakdown. I wonder if I'd ever had that before. It's very strange because my parents definitely had the greatest hits, but I feel like all I knew of this song is like everything else around the song. So that really surprised me when that came in. The bass is incredible. And I really like the drums when they kind of finish off Freddie Mercury's points when they're like, du-du-du. But I think this is a bit much for me. Especially the I want to ride my bicycle, that gets a bit whiny and repetitive. And for me, I've put the dueling guitars are a bit too cock rock for me.
It's also a hard song to dance to. There's too many time checks.
That's fine. What's the other Queen song that people like to do in karaoke that's impossible to dance to?
Don't Stop Me Now.
Don't Stop Me Now. Yeah, like it's the same thing. But yeah, the lyrics. Okay, I've looked at them again. That is interesting if it's about bisexuality, but I feel like some of them are not as classy. You say Coke, I say Kane. You say John, I say Wayne. Hot dog, I say Cool It Man. I don't want to be the president of America. Okay, Freddie. Did you also see that Brian May said that apparently Freddie wasn't very keen on cycling and he was a Star Wars fan?
Yeah, he wants to know he was a Star Wars fan, guys. Yeah. Stop emailing Brian. So, Christian, are you a fan of the bicycle race?
I agree with you. One of my favorite Queen songs of all time. Super fun and playful. Probably, you know what? I'm a cyclist here in Toronto, so I get out as often as I can. So this song resonates with me, perhaps not on the way it was intended by Freddie, but for me, on a non-symbolic, I actually think of it every time I get on my bike.
But see, Christian, I'm also a cyclist here in Brussels.
Do you guys cycle in clothes?
I do think about it.
Or naked?
In clothes. Okay. In clothes. But I have to say, one of the times I visited London recently, the naked bike ride that happens every now and again went by the pub that I was at, and that was a big surprise.
What kind of cream do you
we have the same thing here.
yeah, cream. You hope it's not too sunny and they don't get sunburned. But please, carry on, Christian.
I love that bridge part, or middle eight, as you call it in England. Mm-hmm. Jaws was never my scene, and I don't like Star Wars. It's just like, so you're saying that he did like Star Wars? He definitely likes
Star Wars. F1, Freddie does like Star Wars. It's just a lyric.
Another great part is that Beatles-esque breakdown. Beatles, of course, where he sings "Fat Bottom Girls." Mm-hmm. They'll be riding today, which is, I love self-referential things, because this was actually a double A side with Fat Bottom Girls. So I love that little Easter egg right there. And there's another breakdown. I think it's around the 2-minute mark. It's mostly just noodling guitars, but that really, really, it sounds exactly like Sparks to me. And I'm not sure, I know they overlapped, so I'm not sure if Sparks influenced this song or this song influenced that Sparks sound, because I know Sparks was in England at the time.
Yeah, so Sparks would have predated this because
that's 74, wasn't
78, it? So like after this, Sparks went down the synth pop route.
Yeah. Okay, so there you go. You got Sparks influencing this.
But yeah, so moving on to see, in my head it was a slower, heartfelt ballad, but it's actually quite up tempo, which is Somebody to Love. Maybe I was thinking of the George Michael version, which I probably heard more than this because I was around when Freddie passed away and we had that tribute concert at Wembley in 1992. So that's probably why I thought of it as a slower song. But yeah, this is kind of a tribute to Aretha Franklin. This is the soulful Queen. But yeah, it's Freddie Mercury's favourite song he ever wrote. And you can hear that this is perfect for where they'd be heading to next, which would be stadium rock, especially with the ending, like, find me somebody to love. Like, Freddie knew that he'd be singing that to thousands of people singing it back to him. But yeah, some people adore this. This is, when we discuss Queen, like, when I first thought of Queen, they were kind of like my mum's band. And the more you hear of Queen, the more you hear about maybe their 70s tracks that they were kind of linked to early on bands like Led Zeppelin, which is far away from this. So maybe that's why it's confusing. So a lot of, like, my parents didn't really know about their first 4 years of Queen, you know. So for me, yeah, this is kind of like mum rock. Is that a genre? Who knows? But yeah, it's maybe you've heard it too many times, and maybe George Michael's version's kind of tainted this for me. Babs?
Yeah, this is that rock piano that I don't like here. And this might be sacrilege, but I just don't know enough about the genre. But is this Billy Joel with extra vocals and guitars? Because that piano sound is what I associate with it. And I mean, that's very diminutive, maybe. But yeah, I don't really like this song very much either. I can appreciate it from a technical standpoint. I do like how it builds, the way it builds, but for me, the payoff I don't like. And again, I find the repetitive bits are a bit annoying. But I did enjoy reading about the voice layering techniques, how it's basically Mercury, Brian May, and Roger Taylor sounding like 100 people through the layering. I was really surprised to read about the Aretha Franklin connection, because for me it does feel much more honky tonk, much more musical theatre, to be honest, than soul, because that's where Freddie is really good at. He's really good at emoting the lyrics. You do feel that he's really soul searching and questioning God, you know, why can't I find anyone? But that piano is more Brian May guitar, this piano, please.
Christian, more Brian May or?
I hate the song. It's up there with one of my most hated songs. Right up there, in fact. And you know what? This might be sacrilegious.
You looked sideways as if you were guys.
My number one most hated song of all time is Paul McCartney's Wonderful Christmas Time.
Okay.
And for some reason, this gives me that same visceral feeling. It makes me feel physically ill. I don't know how to explain it.
Did you ever work in a record store at Christmas time like I did? You would have hated it.
Oh, they overplay that song here in Toronto, as I'm sure they do all over Europe. But it's just, I don't know what it is. It's like that synthy, I don't know what it is. It makes me feel gross. Somebody to Love is like a perfect example of a Queen song that leaves me feeling empty. And it's funny because, you know, it is a deep song. It's about love and stuff, but it's just like, I don't connect with it at all. So I really, really dove into this song. I'm like, why do I hate this song? What is it? Because it is Queen. It is all the things I do like about Queen. And I think it goes down to the production of it. I believe this was produced by Queen themselves. So it has all the hallmarks of Roy Baker, but it's almost like this was the point in their career where he taught them their own sound, and then they cast him aside when they got the gist of the template. And so like the Queen vocals are there, those tripled harmonies, but they're overblown and overused. And this is a perfect example of why you need a producer, someone outside of the band with a partial ear, tell you when something is too much or too little. Those vocals are just way too much in the song overall. And I think it destroys the ethos of the song and what it's supposed to be and how it's supposed to feel. It's too much of everything. And even Brian May's guitar solo, we can talk about his sound. And I think this was probably maybe Roy Baker not being there, but if you listen to his guitar sound, it's sonically really thin. Doesn't sound like him in a weird way. He has the same technique and all that, but it doesn't have that. It's missing that like underneath growl bass part of the notes. I don't know. But if I can find one good thing about this song, it's probably the end. But I mean, not just because the end, but I do like how the vocals build at the end. So, yeah, that's my musical nerdy breakdown of why I hate this song.
Finally, we can't do a Queen podcast without discussing a certain Bohemian Rhapsody, or Bo Rap as the kids are calling it these days.
Mm-hmm.
They say that this is the first music video of all time, although I don't know what the Beatles were doing in the 60s if that's the case, because they had a few music videos. It was controversial because it was 6.5 minute track, and they thought it would get no airplay and it would kill the band, and the band were penniless and they needed to have a hit. And then Kenny Everett, the Radio 1 DJ, played it, and the rest is history. But I am from a certain era where the first time I heard it was probably in Wayne's World, so it's impossible for me to not see three guys headbanging to Brian May's guitar. But what is interesting, I watched a documentary as per usual, and even Brian May's guitar solo was written by Freddie Mercury. Yeah,
really?
Every single thing of it was in Freddie Mercury's head, and he then told Brian what to play, which is insane. So yeah, the whole thing, Freddie had 3 songs over the past 3 years, then he put them all together, and in his head he structured out how everything was going to sound exactly, and they produced it over 6 different studios, different parts, and then at the end they popped it all together. And then we had Bohemian Rhapsody. Unfortunately for me, I don't know if I like the song anymore, because I've heard it a billion times, spoofed, all sorts of versions. I think maybe as a child I adored it, although I had no idea what the hell Beelzebub was about or anything, or half the terms he talks about. I think I enjoyed the middle section more than the introduction, but yeah, it's even now I don't know if I love Bohemian Rhapsody or if I find it fucking annoying. It's a song that I've heard too much to really have an opinion anymore regarding it. Babs, how about you?
I know what you mean, but I think I still love it. It's too much fun. It's too impressive. There's when you read it of like, oh, it's made up of an intro, a ballad segment, an operatic passage, a hard rock part, and a reflective coda. You're like, yeah, wow, that is really what it's doing. And it is 3 different songs combined that needed nearly 200 tracks. I was reading 8 generations of 24 track tape. I mean, impressive logistics there. I like the song as the song, you know, the different sections. It starts so simply with that piano, and then each instrument kind of comes in, a bit like Young Person's Guide to the Orchestra by Britain. Even again, those nice touches, like when he says "send shivers down my spine," and there's a noise kind of coming that in, and the hard rock section at the end just fits in perfectly. Like, it is so impressive that a song like this makes sense, but it does, and continues throughout the ages. And the moment someone starts singing it, whether it's at a wedding or in a car or on a bus or a bus journey, everyone joins in the note and you have a lot of fun. So yeah, it is overplayed, but even if it was more overplayed, I don't think I'd ever hate it.
I guess for us, it's not that sensational because we grew up with November Rain and Muse and all these other bands having these like 6 or 7 minute epic songs with lots of changes. But I guess if I was around in 1975 or it would maybe blow my mind. But yeah, it is hard to decide if I adore it. So Christian, I'm sure you've heard the song before. Are you still a fan?
I have. So not only Queen's best song, but I think this actually might be one of the best songs ever written.
Love the oscillation here from from hatred to love.
Yeah, this is Queen for me. This is it. This is running the gamut of emotions. It's an absolutely beautiful song, and though like I say that I don't connect with Queen's music on an emotional level, this song is actually the exception. The beginning and end make me feel sad. It's Freddie Mercury at his most vulnerable. You can really feel the emotion coming through in his vocal performance. Unbelievable melodies, perhaps the best, melody in a verse ever. Really sends chill down your spine. It's being 6 minutes is an absolute journey from piano ballad to rock song, and resolves right back to where it began. It's the epitome of epic. Now, getting back to Fran's point is what's interesting. What's sort of like interesting to me is that once a certain song enters the collective pop culture realm, it becomes a parody, and I absolutely despise it. And a perfect example of that is, I don't know, do you guys get CSI Las Vegas?
I know the concept a little bit, yeah.
The theme song, the Who's Who Are You is the theme song, and I can't listen to that song with it's like it's the Who's song second, but it's the CSI Las Vegas sort of theme first. And so I just can't listen to that song without thinking that ridiculous show. And it happened to Bohemian Rhapsody with Wayne's World, right? Mike Myers, Dana Carvey, and that whole scene is built around it. In fact, like if you talk to anybody about that movie, that scene is the one that comes up. But for some reason, it's never lost its shine to me. Maybe for a little while, I was like, oh God, I do hate Mike Myers' character in that movie. But it transcends that pop culture sort of, blip in time. As cheesy as it was used in that movie, it's a ridiculously good song. So I don't know. I want to hate it because it's such a popular song. It's such a part of like music lexicon. You know what I mean? It's like, but for some, it's just that good of a song that I feel like I'm gushing about it. I'm just I was hating on the last song, and now I'm like loving this song. But
Christian, it's a journey not unlike many Queen songs. So there we
go. Yeah, really.
I mean, the stats for this song are impressive. So after Bohemian Rhapsody film, it became the most streamed song from the 20th century. So on Spotify, it's had over 2 billion streams, and it was certified diamond in 2021 for combined digital sales and streams equal to 10 million units. I mean, supremely impressive for what is, as Mercury says, a mock opera. This is it. They're sneaky. They brought classical music and classical music structures into the mainstream, but because it's got the hard rock and because it's got the piano that's prevalent in so much other mainstream pop and rock music, people can get on board. What a convincing man. And yeah, in the UK, it's the third best-selling single of all time after Elton John's Candle in the Wind and the previously discussed Band Aid 84. But did you know, this was my favorite fact that I discovered from looking at that list, number 16 is Aqua's Barbie Girl, which I was not expecting. I thought about doing a little quiz, but then no, I just thought I'd bring you that fact. So, Christian, me, Fran, we're not the only people being gushing about this song, or wondering if they're gushing about this song. Maybe in Fran's case, I don't think there's anything really like it.
I've never heard anybody cover this song. Have you?
I have, and it was bad, but I can't remember who it was.
You've got to have some guts to try and cover Bohemian Rhapsody, but I'll be interested to see someone do it. I might check that out after the podcast. So I'm asking the question, Babs. Queen, let's say 70s Queen, over or underrated?
Oh, it's a tricky one. If we go just from this playlist, yes, totally, because the only songs that I'm truly enthusiastic about are Killer Queen and Bohemian Rhapsody. The other ones, well, in every one of them, there's something that I can admire about it. I think, again, just for the obsession, the love, the overplayedness of all of the songs, I think they are overrated, but I will never ever take away Freddie Mercury's, especially vocals from him. I mean, he is one of the best vocalists of all time, no doubt. So who gives a fuck what I think?
Christian, Queen, overrated or underrated?
It's weird because I want to say overrated. And I'll stick with that, but I compare. It's not more about their music, but more about their contemporaries. I think of T-Rex, Slade, the Sweets.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, which I think all of those bands are very underrated. I'll stick with overrated. Let's just say that.
And I think that maybe apart from 3 or 4, decent tracks in the 70s. I agree with Christian that I think that T-Rex and the Sweet have a better back catalogue and aren't played as much. But I guess their charisma of Freddie Mercury went a long way, and they're still probably one of the biggest bands in the whole world. I think the Queen's Greatest Hits is the greatest selling. Is it the greatest selling UK album of all time?
I think so.
Yeah.
And I of course checked their Spotify statistics. So they've got over 42 million monthly listeners, but they're 51st in the world, which actually was a bit lower. If someone had asked me, where would you have put Queen, I would have put them in the top 20, I think. So
but I think
there we go.
They killed themselves in America, didn't they? Because of I Want to Break Free. Destroyed themselves in America.
Oh, because of the music video.
Because of the cross-dressing, you can't do that.
Yeah.
So that's probably why we lost a lot of...
but Sam Smith dressing up as they do, that's the controversy. Nothing like that happened 40 years ago.
No.
Anyway.
So, Queen, overrated.
Sorry, guys.
Do you like music and do you like podcasts? Chances are you like music podcasts. Take this one for example, Pick a Disc. I'm Matt Latham, and every fortnight a guest comes on to Pick a Disc to talk about an album for any reason that they want to. We'll talk about the album as a whole, we talk about the songs, we talk about any personal stories about the album, and if they've ever seen the band live, and all sorts of other crazy tangents. And if at any point any of that made you want to listen to Pick a Disc, then you can find us on your podcast apps of choice or on the Facebooks and Twitters and Instagram under Pick a Disc. We're also on the We Made This Podcast Network on WeMadeThisNetwork.com and on Twitter at @we_made_this. Goodbye.
Underrated.
So, welcome back to part 2 of Over Underrated, and we are doing Christian's underrated choice, The Ark. So, Christian, tell our fans about The Ark.
Well, what can I say? They are a rock band from Sweden. I'm reluctant to use the word glam rock because I think they're so much more than that, but it's the most accessible label I can put on them for people who haven't heard them. They have 5 albums out from 2000 to 2010, and they recently got back together after a decade hiatus for a reunion tour. I wrote a book about them probably just before they broke up. I've been friends with them for many, many years. I met them back when I was living in Milan, in Italy, in 2002. And when I moved back to Toronto, they were really trying to break America. And so I would go over to New York City, and basically they were not known in America at all. So I was they were enamored that I would drive 12 hours from Toronto to New York. Being that I was a musician, I think that was my in, because I wasn't just a fan. We were sort of on a sort of like same level where they didn't feel like, oh, who's this weirdo? Over the years, we just really got to know each other. I can say they're just amazing guys. So this might be a little bit biased for me to say that they're underrated, but
I think you're the biggest expert of any band. Well, apart from when we interviewed Chris Ollie, the lead singer of the band 6x7. So you're the most qualified to talk about any of the underrated bands that we've previously discussed. So thank you, Christian.
Yeah, but I think my opinion is very is very balanced. So on this 5-song list that Fran came up with. So
I discovered The Ark via Kent. So I was given a mixtape in 2001, and on that mixtape from Sweden was a song called It Takes a Fool to Remain Sane. And not knowing anything about The Ark, I assumed it was an 80s band I'd never heard of regarding the sound. And then it turns out that they had recently toured with Kent and were like massive in Sweden. And this was like 2001, and I was like, what? This music is #1 in Sweden.
Ow.
Like, what? Like, in the UK, we do not have anything like this at all. So I got excited that elsewhere in the world, there's this this untapped source of these great glam bands and great synth pop bands that still existed, and America hadn't taken over the whole world. So I would order in for like £20 ARC CDs when they came out, and yeah, I bought the first two and I would go through the inlay to see anything about the ARC because before YouTube, I couldn't see any videos. I just saw the pictures in the inlay, thinking, "Wow, these guys are like cartoon characters." Oh, and then in 2006, they did a show in London in the Barfly, which is maybe 300 capacity, and it was probably the best gig I've ever had. And I felt like I had seen Crean in 1975 play at a nightclub. And I took my then girlfriend and my best friend, who both had never heard a song by the Ark, and they came out saying, "That is the best gig I've ever been to in my entire life." And we were literally just like buzzing for the next day. And I remember at one point, Ola, who's quite a flamboyant showman, he was topless apart from like a diamond necklace maybe, wearing gold hot pants and angel wings, I believe, and he reached out and grabbed hold of a light and was singing, leaning over the audience, and suddenly I put my hand up and touched his chest. Like, what am I doing?
You're touching Jesus!
So yeah, things I would never do in my entire life I did whilst watching the Ark. And then I was lucky enough, when they toured with The Darkness later on in the year, they did another gig at the Scala, and I remember Jepson, who's their guitar player, he walked into the crowd doing a guitar solo, grabbed a pint, downed it, and then carried on doing this guitar solo and walked back onto the stage. And I was like, this band are fucking amazing. And then, unfortunately, they never had any success in the UK at all. So I never got to see them. And then before I knew it, they had broken up. So I don't think they'll come to the UK again because they've just done their reunion. So I can just try and remember back to 2006 and, Ollie's sweaty chest and all the love I had watching the Ark live. But yeah, I won't go into the playlist yet. So Babs, I assume you knew nothing about the Ark.
So I think I saw them perform one of the songs that's on this list. I had maybe heard the name, but I knew absolutely nothing. And I'm curious, actually, Christian, you wrote a book about them. Was it a kind of biography, an authorized biography by them, or was it placing them in a wider scene? I'm curious to hear more about the book.
It was so around I'm trying to think, the past 2 decades are such a blur. I think it was probably around 2007, so before they entered Eurovision. So there is a the pre-festival that each country has.
Melody Festival.
Yes, Melody Festival.
Yeah.
I'd been friends with them for a couple of years, and I said to Ola, I'm like, they were really starting to become something otherworldly, right? They were on the cusp of breaking America. They never did. That's a whole other story. And I wrote him an email. I said, listen, I want to write a book about you because nobody knows you over here. And I feel like you guys have a super interesting and inspiring story. How many bands with 5 or 6 people, survive tumultuous periods of growth and fame? And I just wanted to show these guys through it all, even after they broke up, it was not because they were enemies, it was just because they wanted to do other things. It's I thought it was so inspiring that they were able to, it was friendship first and band second, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I also wanted to, and I don't know if I know NME and when Melody Maker was around, it was, the press kind of got to dictate what the story of bands were. And in Sweden, it is especially so. And for me, I got to know the band through the band. I got to know their story from their mouths. I can't read Swedish, so I couldn't explore their history or their story, going through archives of Swedish press. I got to know it from their side of things, and from my own perspective and how I saw them interact with each other. And it just seemed like a truth that I wanted to tell. And it seemed like it was never written for the American market. It was written for the Swedish market.
Mm-hmm.
it was a way to just show people who they were. And I think on some level they were like, they're very closed, very secretive. Outside, even their inner circle is it's very small, right? It's like, and I feel like I was the only person who was able to pierce that little bubble, and they really trusted me, and like, I don't know, maybe respected my opinion of who they were, that they didn't see themselves. And so to me, that was what I wanted to convey and to show fans, like a different side, because music press in any market, any country, it can be vitriolic. I mean, they've always been loved in Sweden, but that love and adoration was only what they were presenting, and I wanted to show a different side. I mean, listen, I wish every band could could have someone like me write a story. You know what I mean? Like, it's like,
Yeah.
I think every band deserves their real story to be told, right?
That sounds absolutely fascinating, because I read a little bit about the bio just so I had an idea. And what's interesting about them is that they formed in 91, but that first hit only came in 2000. And it seems that they released an EP, was it Racing with the Rabbits, that was a bit, it wasn't as successful maybe as they thought they would be. And it sounds like, as you said, it was friendship and love of the music that kept them going. So going into this, I was like, okay, glam rock is not a genre that I normally particularly like, but this is, I guess, a bit more modern glam rock. It's Swedish. I'm not maybe as much of a Swedish Fathers fan, but definitely a little bit. So I'm really excited to get into this playlist.
So you start off with the first track, Christian. It Takes a Fool to Remain Sane.
I almost feel like weird talking about this song and my feelings of it, because I don't even think I've never admitted this to anybody, but I hate this song.
Do they know?
No, they've never known it. I've never admitted it. It's a weird one, because when I think of this song, I immediately jump to, like, I just don't like it. And the first time I ever heard this song, the song that got me into this band was Let Your Body Decide. That's the first song I ever heard. I remember I heard this song because they're outside of Sweden. Italy is the other country that they actually...
So many YouTube comments in Italian. Yes, I wanted to ask you about that.
Yeah. So it's somewhat Germany, but Italy is the place where they really became a thing. And it's almost like fate or something that I ended up there. Like, that's where I moved to. And I met a girl, and like that was her favorite band, And I heard It Takes a Fool to Remain Sane in some cafe. And I remember thinking, like, it just made me feel like it's kind of a spooky song in a weird way. I don't know. The chord progression is like, it never filled me with a good feeling. But Ola's delivery and his lyrics are absolutely unbelievably good. It's like a real call to arms. It's like a tale of two songs, right? Because on record, the recorded version is amazing. But I feel like I've heard the live version, because I've seen them so many times, more than the recorded version. And it's just, to me, it's such a boring song live that sort of like outweighed the fact that it's a great song. I don't know how to explain that. And I apologize to Ola and all the art guys that I don't like this song, but even though this is the song that really broke them. So
I do hear that. I can hear why he'll say it could be a bit boring, but for me, it's kind of Ola's kind of rap delivery in the second half. The do what you want. That bit always hits me each time. I have to sing along to it, and I think it's maybe, I think with the Ark is they are kind of musical theatre in many ways, and I would always describe myself as not being a musical theatre fan. But the more I listen to the Ark, thinking, Jesus Christ, a lot of these could be, on Broadway. To be fair, and I feel like this could be a big Broadway end song as well. So I guess I like more musical theatre more than I admit. But yeah, this is what got me onto it. I love Leary's I guess it is a kind of a sinister bass line, the dum 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 dum, and then Otter's like motif piano ding ding ding. When I first heard it, I just had it on a loop, and then after a while, I then started to hear the lyrics and realised what an inspirational song. And I guess for Swedes who are 14, 13 years old back in the start of the noughties, this must have meant a lot to them, and I guess that's why it became such a big hit in Sweden. But Babs, you're a new person to this. Did it inspire you?
Yes, I actually did like this song, and I thought I wouldn't when it started, and I heard it the first time. So, yeah, the first image I saw of them was the image of them on this album cover, and I've written they look like disco gods from the past or future. I can't tell.
Definitely.
I think also they're a phenomenally good-looking band. Well done, everyone. All of them, every single one of them. So I was listening and I was like, oh, this is perfect Eurovision fodder, not realizing what was coming later. Reminded me a lot of the Killers, really, a lot of the Killers. And when it started, I thought, oh, this is a bit too epic sounding. It's trying to pull on my heartstrings in a way that feels a bit cynical, is what I thought on first listen. But by the second listen, I was singing the chorus unaided. You know, a lot of songs that Fran picks often, it takes me so many listens for them to even get into my memory. We did Japan, and even songs that I listened to 5 times before coming to the podcast, I had to kind of listen again quickly before coming because they didn't kind of enter my brain. But this one went straight into the bloodstream. And I thought actually like, oh, I really need to see this live because it's such a journey and it builds so much. And I did see a live version, which was in a different key, and I enjoyed it. But yeah, I like the song, even though it's not usually at all the kind of song I like. I saved it. And then when you look at the lyrics, I mean, every morning I would see her getting off the bus. The picture never drops. It's like a multicolored snapshot stuck in my brain. It kept me sane for a couple of years as it drenched my fears of becoming like the others who become unhappy mothers and fathers of unhappy kids. Whoa. Wow. It really is a song for the outsiders, a song for those who are different. And that's the theme that stays throughout. And I was messaging Fran beforehand because Christian, I don't know if you've heard of a French band called Indochine. The Arc lyrically are like the more poetic, less sexual version of Indochine, of like the band that's singing about LGBT plus issues, about being outsiders and being different, and how that's a superpower. So that was a really nice discovery. So thank you.
This song is unbelievable, and it shows Ola at his absolute lyrical, as a lyrical genius he is. I mean, English is his second language, but the one thing that's always amazed me about him is, and goes back to the interviews I would do for the book and talking to him over the years, is like his grasp of the English language and how to use the English language goes beyond a native English speaker's ability. It's mind-blowing to me, and it's like that lyrical, you know, thing that you just said right there is like a perfect example. It's like it's crafted so well, and it says so much, and it's just a couple lines, you know.
Yeah. And I mean, if you've heard the podcast before, you know how Fran and I don't really usually focus on lyrics, but this is definitely one of those bands that you do want to go and look up the lyrics.
You have to with the Arc.
Yeah. And yeah, I would have never guessed this was from 2000, because for me, I'm like, this is simultaneously timeless yet dated. I can't quite tell what this is. But this I think was maybe my favorite. So just to warn you there of what might be coming.
So moving on to the next track, which is Cut Off Eye, Cut Off You, from 2002. Christian, what are your thoughts on this?
One of my favorite songs by the Arc, fills me with almost a strange kind of sadness in a way. It has a feeling to it. It almost feels like the end of summer, the end of a passionate love affair, and still holding on to a feeling that's like sort of like withering away. I don't know how to explain it, but I think you can understand what that feeling is. There's like a lyric in it that says, I don't know. I know it doesn't make sense, which is the perfect summation of like how I feel about this song in terms of what it reminds me of in terms of seasons. I don't know if this was on purpose or not, but it's always been their encore for as long as I've been going to shows. It's been the show that they play last. So it's interesting because to me it reminds me of a finale of sorts, a finale to summer, a finale to something, and yet it's the finale to their live show. And it's the opposite spectrum of It Takes a Fool, because it's a great studio track, but it really, really shines on stage. And I've always loved that opening line. And I know we were both too young way back when we had our thing. I've always had a thing for lyrics that start with "and." That's how I've always written songs. It's like it's in the middle of a thought and it's like immediate, but it feels personal and imperfect. Yeah, it's actually during the reunion tour, I was in Sweden this summer, and Ola brought me up to sing this song with them in front of like 10,000 people in Örebro in Sweden, and it was
Brand's face of jealousy there.
very, very
I would have shat
nerve-wracking.
myself though about it.
I hadn't been on stage in since pre-pandemic, so it was like Ola came up to me just before they were going on stage, and he said, "You want to sing the end of this with me?" And I'm like, I no, I was gonna say no, and I had my American friend Damien, and he's like, "Dude, you gotta do it." And I'm like, "Yeah, why was I even thinking of saying no?" But I did it, and it was awesome. So yeah.
Yeah, I've not sang this with the Ark, surprisingly, although I have sang in the crowd. And watching on YouTube, I did is it Peace and Love Festival, and it has an orchestra, and there's a section when you just hear like thousands of Swedish people singing back to him, and it's absolutely majestic, and I adore it. And yeah, when I first heard this, I was like, oh, okay, this is the Ark's best song. And with the piano and the drums in unison stabbing away, and like it builds and builds and has that massive chorus, I thought, okay, so the Ark are going to be massive. The Ark are going to come to the UK with this #1 killer single. And then guess what? Nothing at all. Yeah, if a song blows me away, I instantly have a smile on my face. I love big production. Babs doesn't as much as I do, but I love the kitchen sink production, and the outro. I've been waiting for this so long. It touches me, and Babs is about to break my heart. So here we go, Babs.
Okay, here we go. I'll start with the positives. Like I think this goes for all of the Ark songs. For me, they are visual songs. I think with almost all the songs, I'm like, it isn't enough to be listening to this music. This needs to be soundtracking a film. For this one, I'm like, this would go well with some people running up a hill or some sports montage, because you feel like it's an effort. And I think you were talking, Christian, about it being a bit sad. I totally get that, because there is a kind of melancholic tinge that comes, despite that kind of perhaps more chirpy piano. But again, sounds a bit like the Killers to me, again on the edge of glam with a rock indie edge. I don't like the strings here. I've written that it feels like they're accompanying a children's TV show. And the more the song has a lot of instrumental parts, and they go on for ages, which is also why I'm like, this would be much better accompanying something, so I can see something that's going on. But the lyrics are fantastic. Like, it's definitely, to me anyway, about some kind of friends with benefits situation, or you settling for someone who is not the ideal person, but somehow there's some kind of chemistry there that keeps bringing you back together. I was worried that the playlist would be 5 songs like this, and it wasn't. But yeah, this was one of my lesser favorite ones.
So moving on to track 3, which is One of Us Is Gonna Die Young from their 3rd album, it's The State of the Ark. Christian, what are your thoughts on this?
Perfect pop song. I remember I heard this. The first time I heard this, I was immediately like, yes, this is it. It's got that like oomph of immediacy and the most perfect chorus that takes, just everything up to 11. That line, "and we both have to get it on before the summer's gone," is like one of my favorite lyrics of all time. It's so simple, but such a real, tangible thought. Again, it starts with an and you know what I think of lyrics starting with and it's really got this like summer tone to it. It's a feeling of hope and the idea that anything is possible. And the chorus, we gotta hurry with no worry to get done today because one of us is gonna die young. If that isn't a call to arms, I don't know what is. It's sort of like dark in a way because it's like an interesting reminder that we only have one life and we need to live life to a fullest. And like even me saying that sounds really cheesy, but hearing Ola sing it, it's like, yeah, dude, you know?
I'm with you.
I love this song. I've always loved this song.
I think I was surprised when I first heard it because I was expecting it to have more guitars. Like when you first hear like the swirling synth sounds and the hand claps, I was like, oh, okay, they've taken down the guitars a bit too much. And I thought, is this too cheesy? But then after 3 or 4 spins, I adored it, and I love Levy's bass playing over it. And again, another great climax. I love a big climax. And when I saw them live in London, Olive said that one of the lyrics, was I didn't know, was him doing his version of a Cockney accent, going, "Hello, how are you?" So I was like, okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, he loves wordplay, and I think this would have been. We're going to mention the next track, Eurovision. I think this song would have been perfect for Eurovision. Personally, this was a song they should have chosen. I think this had more chance to win, but I can imagine that my co-host is not going to be a fan. But if you watch it live, there's a few more guitars than that. It's not as cheesy. But like I said, even myself didn't like it when I first heard it. You need to give it maybe half a dozen spins before it sinks in. And then I think it's glorious now.
I will start with the positives
Okay,
once again. I wrote absolutely the same. Perfect Eurovision fodder, although it is over 3 minutes, so it would need to be cut down a little bit. When it started, right, I thought, okay, this isn't so much for me. It's a bit too sunny for me, but I quite like that arpeggio synth and the drums and the hand claps. I was enjoying it more than Call If You Cometh I. But the chorus, I think, is one of the most annoying choruses I've ever heard in my life. It really nah. I was like, oh, this is again childlike is what it felt like to me, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but yeah, but for me it gets up my hackles, as they say, if they say that. What is interesting about the song is the way that chorus comes in is only once, because then when you think it's going to come in again, it changes and suddenly it's stripped back and you're like, oh wow, this is not what I was expecting. So kudos for that. But yeah, Fran, when you said I thought it was cheesy and then it wasn't, and I was like, yeah, unfortunately I heard it I think 3 times and I just couldn't get over that chorus. But again, doesn't surprise me that you're telling me to watch it live, because I feel like this is really one of those bands where that enhances it for sure.
Definitely, and it's a shame that you have not heard these songs live, because I think they are.
I think
they are one of the greatest live bands, and I mean, I see them, I'll never see them again. I mean, Kristen's lucky to see them.
So really, Fran, the best gig you've ever seen, if you had to pick
I even went on. I even went on Setlist FM, and I can't find the setlist for the Scala one. This is annoying, but I think we only played 10 songs at Barfly, but for me it seemed like 2 hours because it seemed to go on all night. But yeah, I from the reaction. From seeing a band live, not knowing what to expect because I'd never seen it on YouTube or anything, and to leave, like there's one point when he came on, he did the Camden Barfly is basically a bloody upstairs of a pub, so you do not expect a band to do a costume change mid-song, and that doesn't ever happen in a Barfly. And he came on, he crowd surfed, he then vanished. And then whilst Jepson was playing his guitar solo, and then came back on stage wearing the wings and the gold hot pants. So I don't know if he ran around the back of the venue, but I mean, for a band who are not known in the UK, to give that amount of of love to the fans, to give the proper arc
it's a show.
Yeah,
it's a
it's like,
show,
I'm not expecting all of that. And it's like, yeah, bring me away. And the fact that I was with 2 people who had never heard the band in their life, and to say that was the best show they've ever seen. So, and I don't think that I've had that with many bands since. So yeah,
I think the only one for me is LCD Sound System, that I saw them knowing one song which they played first, and then I was mesmerized by their set.
Having seen them as many times as I have, and they've definitely changed from what I saw in 2002 to what I saw this past summer. Very, very different band. Still, bar none, the best band I've ever seen live. And I've seen a lot of bands. I'm sure you guys, Fran, you have as well. I can easily contest that is probably not even close. They are a live band for sure. So, and getting back to Fran, Babs, why you hate this song? I totally get it. It is too melodic, too poppy, too playful for you. I understand that.
Yeah, but that's okay. Like you're here rapping. The both of you are here rapping. And I don't have just negative comments. I don't just have negative comments for the next two songs.
Underrated. Sous-évalué. Überschätzt. Underskattad. Underrated.
Yeah, I think Christian first wanted Prayer for the Weekend, but I thought we've got to have a Eurovision chat. So I asked to change it to this next track, which is the Worrying Kind from 2007. So, Christian, what are your memories of this coming out?
It's funny. The Ark is my underrated band here, but you've put two of the songs that I probably dislike the most by them, and this is up there. Again, I do love my like bubblegum glam, but it just doesn't fit into the Ark's discography for me. It seems it is them, but it seems forced in a weird way. I don't know what to explain. Like I have an emotional connection to them, but this song I don't have an emotional connection to at all, even though it does deal with like serious matter of like anxiety. It's just and they often do this. They often mix, the morose, sad, lyrical subject matter with poppy, happy, playful music. But for some reason, this doesn't work for me. And I think it's probably, it didn't help that it was the song that propelled them to Eurovision, but I don't think any other song could have. This is a very Eurovision song. So it's funny because I had to look back and I'm like, is this on an album? Like that's how not the Ark it sounds to me in a weird way. But yeah, of course it's off their biggest record, Prayer. So I don't know what to say. It's just it was never my bag, even though it should be.
Could you watch the final? Were you in Toronto when on Eurovision?
I was actually living in Prague at the time, and I was working on the book. So I think there was initial plans for me to join them there, and then I just stayed in Prague and we just got drunk.
Why?
I don't know.
So yeah, for me, this is when the Ark died. So going from seeing the best concert of my life in 2006, I was so excited to hear the next tracks, and when this came out, and I knew they're doing Eurovision, I was like, oh no, like yeah. So this is wedding disco vibes, far too catchy. I mean, it's only this today that I realise it's about anxiety. I was not expecting that. This could be 1974, Top of the Pops with Pound People doing a dance routine to it. I don't know if that reference will scan across Canada and Belgium, but yeah, and then so for example, their third album, The State of the Ark, is my favourite Ark album. I think there's like 8 songs I like on it, and then with this, 4 songs, and then when I came into In Full Regalia, maybe I like 2 songs. So I was a bit crushed, and I was surprised to find out that Prayer for the Weekend was their biggest album. Well, I mean, as much as it could be post Napster, but so watching them on Eurovision, I felt like, okay, it's nice that more people will find out about them, and I thought maybe they will get a release in the UK out of it, but that never happened. So it's just all bad news, unfortunately. So Babs, do you remember actually seeing the Ark on Eurovision?
I'm pretty sure I saw them because I remember Verka Serduchka. But I don't remember them singing specifically. So when I heard the song again, I was like, I don't remember it, which is surprising because, like Fran, if there's a man with makeup androgynous, like I'm gonna remember them. But I think also 2007, I wasn't into Eurovision as much as I became into Eurovision in the following decade. But yeah, I really disliked this. I wrote that this kind of 70s flavored rock is cheesy and anathema to me. So I focused on the aesthetics. 12 points from me feathers, eye makeups. He has like a sequined heart necklace, and he's very scantily clad. And I'm like, it's usually the women. Why not the men? And yeah, I was curious about the Italian fans because for me, given Maneskin winning in 2021 with extremely similar aesthetics and how popular that was and how they're now taking over the world, I wonder if they would have done better. I think it also needs to be kept in mind that this was the Eurovision in Finland the year after Lordi won. So it was a Eurovision that was particularly kind of rock and metal heavy. So I think they probably stood out less than a band like Maneskin did in 2021, because in Eurovision 2022, suddenly there are a lot more bands as well. Yeah, unfortunately, I think there were just, lots of standout tracks that year. And as I said, lots of rock and metal. So yeah, I'm relieved to hear that you guys aren't such a fan, because I think, Christian, you said that it's the Ark and not the Ark. And I think what the Ark definitely have, even in the songs that I don't like as much, is many, many layers. I can understand where you're saying glam rock is a bit reductive, because it's not. There's rock and melody and synths and other things going on, whereas this just feels a bit more redundant 70s rock for sure.
And I've never confirmed this with Ola, and I don't even know if he would even admit it, but I think it was just dumbing down their sound for a common denominator audience like Eurovision, just really paring it down, paring all the good parts and taking out the soul of an Ark song and doing it. And maybe he'll disagree with me on that.
I mean, lyrically, as you say, not at all, right? Because it's that thing of, it's so much deeper than what it seems like on the surface, but musically, I would agree.
Yeah, it does feel like the edges have been taken off the Ark, but I mean, even the music video seems quite different to the other kind of stuff. It's like dance routines in the background and all sorts of things happening in it. It's all very strange. So moving on to the final track with a change of pace, and this is Stay With Me from the final album, in full regalia. So Christian, what are your thoughts on this?
Not a huge fan of the album as a whole, but this is a standout track for sure. Beautiful song, reminds me almost like classic Ark. As I've said, and friend, you exploring their discography, it's like you can see how different the band became throughout that decade.
Definitely.
But this really harkens back to State of the Ark for me, in the same realm as No End. Just a beautiful song, really emotional, wanting, pensive, pleading. It's like a classic tale of like attempted redemption of being in a relationship with someone that you perhaps unwittingly take advantage of emotionally through just being a dick, being selfish behaviors, and then one day you wake up and you realize that you're like destroying and hurting the very person that allows you to be comfortable and confident, and in the end selfish. So it's like suddenly realizing, you've been an asshole, and then you change and you'll do anything for them to stay. So it's like pleading, and I think this is common in relationships for a lot of us, whether we're on one side or another. So it's like easy to relate to that line, that in all of this time I've been so goddamn stubborn, all this time so selfish and unkind, just really sums it up. Very sparse song, and I always loved that guitar solo at the end. And getting back to what I love about music is guitar solos. It's funny that the Ark is one of my favorite bands, but yet they barely have any guitar solos on any of their songs. In fact, I think the only guitar solos are on this album. It's a great song. It's just unfortunate that the album turned out the way it did, because Ola played me all of the demos for this, and they were fucking amazing. Everything got lost. I can't remember. I think the computer just crashed, and they didn't have anything backed up.
Oh God!
And they had rented all of this space on music shelves back when music stores were a thing. Because along with this album was a magazine, so it was sort of like this. How Select magazine used to have the CD insert.
Yep.
with the mixes. It was sort of that idea. So the magazine was the thing, and even though it was the album release, the CD itself was sort of like an accompaniment to the magazine, and so they had pre-booked all of this space in all of these Virgin stores and like HMVs and whatnot. And so when they lost it, they couldn't delay the release. They had to release it. And so they rushed to re-record everything. And that's why, like, if you listen to this record, it sounds like 10 songs that were recorded in 10 different places. You know, it's very disjointed, and to me it just sounds like a band who's ready to call it quits, you know.
With that said, like, do you think that they never wanted to try again to end with a perfect album? It just seems a bit sad that they kind of finished this way, you know, because they only even had like one hit single, because this was a single, but they said that no one really played it, so it kind of just like, you know, the whole album just like was dismissed after a few months.
I mean, I just think it was like, I know for Ola, everything is like, you know, how he feels, and I think in his mind it was done. I don't think that they'll ever release anything ever again, and I don't think this album was the plan, but it's the one that happened. You know, it's just like, it's like the luck of the draw with everything from, you know, and you've read the book, from, you know, the ill-fated Breaking America thing, and like, it's a band that became massive in Sweden, and yet they were plagued by such bad luck on so many levels that it was detrimental to their careers. And it's probably a perfect example of why I think they're underrated, is because they never, if they were allowed those breaks, that way lesser talented bands with worse songs became bigger, they would have been huge. But I mean, that's, you know, that's fate, you know, and kind of what makes them special too, right? Is like, you know, those sort of like feelings within their songs is basically, you know, the timeline of them as a band and as people. So it's kind of interesting.
At least they had success at home. I mean, some bands don't even get to play to more than 1,000 people, so at least they had, you know, number one albums in Sweden at least. But yeah, like I said, no, I find it mad that the Darkness became the biggest band in the UK, and then, you know, the Ark, complete unknowns. But back to the song, yeah, again, that album's crazy. Like, you've got things like Hygiene Squad and Red Cap. It's just everywhere. It's like yeah, 10 just randomly chosen songs put on an album. But I struggled with this. It feels like it wants to be a stadium filling ballad, but it's got a really strong bass line, and it feels like it's going to move on. And a lot of the Ark songs do have like bridges and other layers. I feel like this is more sparse than I wanted it. I feel like there needs to be a piano melody or something to fill the gaps. So for me, it doesn't hook me in. I do like the middle eight, but I think there's a key change near the end. And I'm not a big fan of key changes, unfortunately. That can kill most songs off for me. So therefore, yeah, it's not my favourite.
When I heard this was a ballad, I was like, oh no. But it hooked me almost immediately, which I was, you know, very surprised. It almost lost me in the key change. I'm with Fran there, but I think it's the fact that it centers his voice over everything else. The strings are much more subtle. Even the guitar solo, yes, it comes in for a little bit, but by that point, you've seen his vocals travel the whole gamut from loud to quiet, low to high. And compared to the other songs, the lyrics are much more simple, but that doesn't take away from the feeling you get from his voice. Maybe actually because they're even more simple, you feel his imploring even more. And like It Takes a Fool to Remain Sane, I was thinking, like, maybe this is why they went as big, because I am someone who isn't naturally attuned to this kind of music, and both of the songs that I like the most wouldn't be the kind of genres that I normally like, and it took several listens for me to get them. And I'm like, well, if you're trying to break through to an audience that doesn't normally listen to this kind of rock in an era when this kind of rock isn't popular, I think it is just the bad luck of the timing, because I think this is a band that, well, yeah, while the chorus of it takes a fall to remain sane got in my head, even now that I've listened to it 4 or 5 times, I wouldn't know the rest of the song. I wouldn't know how it builds. I wouldn't know the journey. I'd need to go back and listen. And same with Stay With Me. I can remember the chorus in my mind, but I can't remember the rest of the song. So yeah, this was maybe my second favorite from the list, despite it not being at all what I usually like. So yeah, I was very intrigued by this band. I was messaging Fran like, lyrically they're great, musically they're all over the place.
Yeah, there's a chains per album. So I guess the first album's kind of like playful, you can dance to it. Second album has some big stompers like Father the Son, but then again it has some big ballads like Tell Me the Night Is Over. So for me, the third album has some strange moments. There's some African influences coming into the third album. There's that No End's a beautiful ballad. But for me, the third album as a complete, I think I like maybe 8 or 9 songs. But they're also, like all of my favourite bands, they have brilliant B-sides. May they rest in peace. And they got a song called Opera, which unfortunately isn't on Spotify, but it's on YouTube. I would heartily recommend you checking out Opera, Babs, because it is a bonkers and brilliant, a little bit like Bicycle Race.
Okay.
I think that is the song that I originally wanted on this list, but it's not on Spotify. So yeah.
Yeah, if they could bring out a B-side compilation, The Ark, and a live album, I will be very happy. If it can make that happen, please, after hearing this podcast. So, Babs, as you were the new person, shall I ask the question, do you think that The Ark are underrated?
This is a difficult one for me. I, of course, went to my usual metric of Spotify listeners. They only have 229,000-ish, but their top 5 songs all have over 6 million plays. So the people who are listening to The Ark are listening to The Ark on repeat, which I guess is not surprising because I think you do need to do that to get into them. Given that I only saved 1 song from the playlist, if we're going by that usual metric, I would be like, no, they're pretty rated. But I don't think a band with those kinds of lyrical themes and looks I could ever say was underrated. So controversially, maybe, yeah, I think they are underrated. I think also going also on your stories of how they are like playing live. I'm trusting you guys, hoping that I one day see them live, and this categorization was not in vain, because I think it's maybe too narrow to just go on the songs given what they represent. I'm kind of contradicting myself, what I said about Freddie Mercury and Queen kind of representing other things. But yeah, it just really reminds me of Indochine, like I said, and Indochine are one of my favorite bands. Of like, we need these bands. We need these bands for the teenagers and the outsiders, looking androgynous. From what I understand, I think Otter is bisexual and fairly open about it as well. Not many people are. Okay, yes. If I was going on the 5 songs picked, I would say they're rated, but on the band's representation as a whole, and with a hope to see them live one day, underrated.
I think it's just a shame that the UK never got to see The Ark apart from that Eurovision performance. I feel like such an incredible band, but it's such a frustrating thing that I always have to try and force people to listen to this band they've not heard of. And no one my age likes to hear new music or bands they've not heard of. Because,
that's not true, Fran. Well, we do our playlists.
We're nice, but to a lot of people, it's like, if I've not heard of them, they must be shit. It's unfortunately what people over a certain age do have that point of view. So I always try and force the Ark on people. Some people push back, but I have persuaded at least a dozen UK citizens to adore the Ark. So I'm doing my little bit.
Citizens, not passport holders, guys. Citizens.
Citizens, that's what I'd be called. Not enough to fill a theatre, but yeah. So I'm doing my bit for the Ark, and the first 3 albums are definite albums to check out. And also on their great hits, they did 2 new songs, which I also think are fantastic closers. So I'm happy that they at least ended with 2 great tracks, which is Breaking Up with God and Apocalypse Ends. Is Apocalypse Ends? Or Apocalypse is Over, sorry. So yeah, if you are listening to this, this does 5 tracks out of maybe 60 songs. Please watch them on YouTube live, because that is where I think they're at their very best. So Christian, I assume you're going to say they're maybe underrated?
I'm with you in terms of I've tried to convert many of my friends
What
here in
nationalities, please,
Toronto.
Christian? Can you break it down for us? I mean, friends, UK citizens, Canadians, Americans,
Canadians mostly,
yeah.
and nobody gets it. And I don't. Again, I think it comes down to time and place. It's like, to me, it represents a period in a tumultuous period in my life where I had just moved to Europe and I was finding my place and I didn't know anybody, and I discovered this band, and it was like almost like they were speaking to me, and Ola was speaking to me. And I think a lot of people have a very similar story with this band. I don't think it would resonate with someone who's in their 30s and like with kids and like they haven't left a small town. You know what I mean? Like it's just not a it is a band for weirdos and for people who are like coming into themselves or like into self-discovery. It's like, so on that end, I would, for sure, they're very underrated.
So that means they are underrated. Congratulations to York. So, Christian, tell us more about your other side of your life. You've been in a band. Is it for Glad? Yeah.
Yes, and it's funny because there is a ARC song called "The Glad Yeah," which means, but it's spelled GLADJE. Is that it? I can't remember. It's Swedish word meaning I think it's happiness. So then I just broke it down into the Glad Yeah. And we were a glam rock band. Before that, I was in just a straight up rock band, and I ended in another rock band called Heavy Static. And and then I hung up my my guitar. When music stopped becoming fun, when I stopped wanting to be out at 3 a.m. hauling gear, I started to do other things, and then the pandemic happened, and I started getting really into videography. And shortly before the pandemic, I was traveling a lot around the U.S. doing road trips, and so I started documenting a lot of those. And I became a travel blogger, travel YouTuber. So that's done pretty well for me. And that's where I am today. So it's like I run the gamut of like, what's that old saying? The jack of all trades, master of none. That would be me. Yeah.
You're a multi-hyphenate, isn't that what the kind of fun term is? Yeah.
I'm constantly like, I feel I'm a living album of I'm a living discography, let's say, where I'm constantly evolving. I don't believe in staying the same too long. I get way too bored doing the same thing. And if something isn't working out for me, I tend to move on real quick. So,
but Christian, what's the name of your YouTube channel, and what kind of vlogs, blogs, whatever you call them these days? I feel very old saying this.
yeah, so I go by the name of the Obscurest Tourist. So I have a website, Instagram, YouTube. My YouTube is basically, it's me exploring lesser known tourist spots off the beaten path. I do a lot of ghost towns in the US, in the desert, exploring a lot of like abandoned places from the 1950s, 1940s in the US as well. Even in some Europe, I do some places in Czech Republic. So mostly it's doing that, which I always felt was like, that's the stuff that I was interested in seeing when I travel. I don't want to hang out at the Vatican. I want to hang out in the tombs somewhere, and maybe not the actual like Rome tombs, but somewhere else. There's, those underground tombs all over Europe. Like that's the kind of thing that I'm into. And I felt if I was into that, other people would be into it. So And, dark tourism has sort of like become a thing. Maybe it hasn't become mainstream, and that's great, but there's still a great many people who are interested in discovering things that you don't find in travel books. So that's where I fit in, is sort of reviewing these places, visiting them, showing you how to get there, and what's, if you leave the interstate or the A1, something. Let's go. Something you can always find. Just like drive off the beaten path and you will find something. And so that's where I fit in.
What's your most underrated travel location or spot to finish off the podcast on? Because I can't think of one personally, but I'm sure you're much better placed to give a recommendation.
I will say, and I was saying to Fran that I have to go to Phoenix tomorrow morning, is Arizona. Arizona, especially for Canadians, Europeans, nobody ever thinks of it. They think of New York City, Chicago, and Los Angeles. And there's this amazing state right in the middle, Arizona, and the entire state is ridiculously beautiful. So that is my underrated travel spot.
Excellent.
So thank you, Christian. And until next time, guys.
Keep glam rocking, everyone. Thank you,
Keep
Christian.
on glam rocking.
Thank you, guys. See you later.
Bye-bye.
So that was the end of part 2. Thank you for listening to the end, and thank you for Christian for being such a good guest, and definitely the most informed guest we've had about any of the bands that we've talked about. We do recommend going to check out his book if you can still buy it. Unfortunately, we had to cut out a huge long section on the Ukrainian Eurovision entry Verka Serduchka. So that's one for if we ever get around to sorting out a Patreon, we will put that on as an extra. And if you want to get in touch to complain about too much Eurovision or not enough Eurovision, we are on Twitter at OUMusicPod and on Instagram at OverUnderatedMusicPod. And we're also OverUnderatedMusicPodcast at gmail.com. Have a good one.